I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume. So I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We are back in the Gospels again. We did a brief detour into 3rd Nephi, but we are back with the Gospels, reading about Christ and his last ministry among the Jews down in Judea. We are in the last few months. We've had the Feast of Dedication, which is today Hanukkah, and that is in December. That's about 3 months before the crucifixion. So we are really getting up there. We're getting close. But in this period, we've had a lot of discourses, largely in Luke, but also in John. A lot of it was going over, reviewing what had been taught to the disciples in Galilee. He is now teaching the Jews in Jerusalem. There's been some unique stuff taught here as well, but a lot, I would say about 60% of it has been review. Now the last thing we read was will few be saved, and he talks about the salvation and prophesies the salvation of the Gentiles as well as the salvation of the Jews for anybody who comes to him. And we are going to continue now in Luke. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. Luke chapter 14, verses 1 through 14. And it came to pass, as he went into the house of one of the chief Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day, that they watched him. And behold, there was a certain man before him which had the dropsy. And Jesus answering spake unto the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? And they held their peace. And he took him and healed him and let him go. And he answered them, saying, Which of you shall have an ass or an ox fallen into a pit, and will not straightway pull him out on the Sabbath day? And they could not answer him again to these things. First of all, dropsy, this is in the modern day generally called edema. It is a abnormal swelling of the body, most commonly in the lower legs and feet, but could be anywhere. So it says he has dropsy, doesn't give us the details on it, but that's what he's being cured of. It's an abnormal swelling usually caused by buildup of fluids in the body. But the more important part is, again, the Jews, by their tradition, you're not supposed to heal on the Sabbath. Partly because by their tradition, the healing would be done by a doctor, a physician. And a physician's work is to heal the sick, is to tend to the sick. But you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. And that's why healing on the Sabbath is generally considered to be a violation of the law, because healing is the work of a physician, and you can't work on the Sabbath. But he has done he's healed on the Sabbath many times. And so he asks the question, and they can't answer him, and he calls them out on their hypocrisy. Let us continue verse 7. And he put forth a parable to those which were bidden, when he marked how they chose out the chief rooms, saying unto them, When thou art bidden of any man to a wedding, sit not down in the highest room, lest a more honorable man than thou be bidden of him. And he that bade thee and him come and say to thee, Give this man place, and thou begin with shame to take the lowest room. But when thou art bidden, go and sit down in the lowest room, that when he that bade thee cometh, he may say unto thee, Friend, go up higher. Then shalt thou have worship in the presence of them that sit at meat with thee. For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. So this is a lesson in humility. This is, don't think you're too good. Don't try and claim the higher spots. Now this is talking about rooms. I believe this is talked about again, like in Matthew. I could be wrong there, but I think it's talking about more the room at the table. The master of the feast sits at the head of the table, and the most honored guest sits to his right, and then the next to his left, and so on down until you get to the foot of the table. And he's saying, don't think that you are the highest, most honored guest. Take the lowest spot. And then when you are asked to come higher, everyone will honor you. But if you take the higher spot and are asked to go lower, that's an embarrassment. Now, there could be rooms, too, that the most honored guest is given the best room in the house when they come. Because it is talking about a wedding, so it could be rooms, could be places at the table. Either way, it is a great lesson in humility. But let us read these last few verses, pick it up in verse 12. Then said he also to him that bade him, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, call not thy friends, nor thy brethren, neither thy kinsmen, nor thy rich neighbors, lest they also bid thee again, and a recompense be made thee. But when thou makest a feast, call the poor, the maimed, the lame, the blind, and thou shalt be blessed, for they cannot recompense thee, for thou shalt be recompensed at the resurrection of the just. And this here is saying, if you throw a feast for those who have money, for your friends and those who are of your own social standing, then they can throw a feast and invite you, and you have your reward. You have kind of compensated each other. But if you invite the poor, if you invite those who are unable to return the favor, then you have the blessing of God. But let us now look at the Joseph Smith translation. It looks like almost everything in this portion has a translation, has a correction to it. Most of it's not too profound, though, so let's see. Verse 2, change which to who. Verse 3, we remove the word answering. It's just, and Jesus spake unto the lawyers. In verse 4, we change he took him to he took the man, just a minor clarification. And in verse 5, it now reads at the beginning, and spake unto them again, saying. Verse 6, we remove the word again. They could not answer him to these things. But verse 7, let us reread the entire verse here in the Joseph Smith translation. And he put forth a parable unto them concerning those who were bidden to a wedding, for he knew how they chose out the chief rooms, and exalted themselves one above another. Wherefore he spake unto them, saying, it's not exactly a difference in meaning, but it does clarify things. The reason he's doing this is because he sees the people. He sees the people who have been invited by this Pharisee to eat, kind of trying to claim the highest honors, trying to claim the highest spot. And he is calling them out on it. Now in verse 8, it's just instead of in the highest room, it's in a highest room. Verse 9 now begins, and he who bade thee with him who is more honorable. Just a clarification. In verse 10, that is changed to who. So that bade thee and that sit at meat are now who bade thee, who sat at meat. And instead of then shalt thou have worship, it is then shalt thou have honor of God. Interesting, but not much to say about it. In verse 11, we change that to who. And then in verse 12, we have a new beginning here. It says, then said he also concerning him who bade him to the wedding. And then we also remove the word thy, and instead of thy rich neighbors, it's just nor rich neighbors. So the parable consists in the two parts. That one, when you are a guest at a wedding, you take the lowest spot so that you can be exalted, so that the master of the feast can raise you up if you are worthy of it. But the master of the feast should be inviting those who cannot repay the kindness. I'm going to leave that here. We continue in Luke for quite a while again, so I will see you there.